Mike. Mics are live. We're ready to go whenever you are.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission. Ms. Womack, would you call the roll, please? Or Mr. Dewey?
Calling the roll for today's meeting, Commissioner Strange.
Present.
Myself, Commissioner Dewey, present. Commissioner Bryan.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Stockdale.
Here.
Commissioner Ellison.
Here.
Commissioner Davis. Here. And Commissioner Stewart.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you.
For everybody to sit closer to the microphones, please.
Okay, in terms of basically setting forth what I hope is the schedule today, the first matter is the Belhaven Hotel, and I see their representatives are here. I would like to allocate an hour to the Belhaven presentation, and building inspector goes first, the applicant speaks, and then there are any questions of the planning commission, and then public comment would be in addition to that, after that hour. And the public comment will be without any back and forth, any repartee. There's no, the public speaks, and that's that. And then we'll have the same for Oceanside Reserve, another hour for that. And the same, the building inspector, the applicant, questions of the planning commission.
Want to introduce Lisa?
Yeah, I think I will. We have a special guest here with us today, the newly appointed city attorney, and welcome. You may regret that after you've been here a while. All right. Is the Belhaven representative?
Well, you're going to start with the building inspector? Or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. Is everybody here from your team?
Yes.
I couldn't see you, so that's why good.
Try to be close to the microphone to save time.
Thanks. Mr. Corey Shinko.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. For the sake of brevity, for both the Belhaven and the major subdivision, I will be highlighting the major portions of the report rather than reading them in their entirety.
And are there new documents that are freshly received? I mean, like in the last day or so?
There have been, and this report was written June 17th. There have been documents that have been submitted as well as acquired from the ICC that this department requested since the date of this report. And I will be speaking to only what I am able to speak to today from what I have had the time to review. And we'll do that to the best of my ability.
And so do you intend to file an amended report after this, depending on what you've received?
That would, the report
be
here,
necessary,
there are certain portions of this report now that are, I wouldn't say null and void, but that they, I believe, have been addressed or that the applicants are attempting to address in the most recent revisions of their plans to some of these,
So when
that
you-
would make some of these statements that are in this particular report outdated.
Okay.
So in any case, we need an update, whether it's something that still is, whether it's a new thing to be addressed or a resolution of something that was in the previous report, it'll get updated one way or the other, right?
Correct, for in an official capacity.
Yeah, great.
So what I'll read today out of this report are remarks that I believe are still a continuing concern, and to address what I can concern of what has come in that I can speak to.
Okay, now today's proceeding is a public hearing for the Belhaven Hotel application, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, please proceed.
So I will start with the issue of off-street parking, loading and unloading, which starts on page 5 and into page 6 of the report. Primarily, the department still has some concerns regarding the hotel parking and valet services as it pertains to the potential impact of vehicles waiting in travel lanes on Wilmington Avenue for a drop-off, check-in, loading and unloading of guests, or using the valet services. What we're mainly concerned with here is to ensure that these operations and the guest parking in general will not adversely impact traffic flow in the area or be operated in such a way as to cause or contribute to traffic congestion. And we have received updated information from the applicant, and I would recommend that the applicant can address those in their capacity as that goes. There were other issues moving down that list to accessibility. There were revised sheets supplied by the applicant since this report has come, and from my understanding, after briefly looking at those plans, the accessible parking spaces in the valet area off of Baltimore Avenue have been moved to the underground parking garage section. An additional ADA van space was included. What seems to be the case is that they are compliant now with those standards, having moved those spaces to the underground parking garage. I do mention the ICC preliminary plan review services, and I wanted to make a comment here about what we received from them. Insofar as what they could review, they largely couldn't provide anything that was meaningful to us at this stage due to insufficient information on schematics in the plans. They had some issues with scaling as well, which prevented them. And so what I would like to say into the record pertaining to that, again, is the information just wasn't sufficient enough to provide any meaningful conclusions at this stage. These certain technical and engineering issues will be looked at during the plans examining stage, in addition to the other portions that we asked them to review. All members of the public will be able to view these documents, all documents, during this time period with FOIA requests, and we will not issue any building permits until the Belhaven team has received approvals from all other city boards and departments, outside agencies, and all third-party technical reviews, such as, including but not limited to, structural and geotech engineering and floodplain. And so while the ICC is included in the documents today, the information is largely unusable from what we gathered from them. And there have been concerns, structural concerns, geotechnical and floodplain concerns that this department will be using in the plans examining stage with a third party as a consultant or multiple if need be until we're satisfied before any permits would be issued along those regards. Moving to loading and unloading, this was something else that was also addressed in the revised plans. There was a slight modification to the maneuvering of Wilmington Avenue on the revised site, the revised sheets provided by the applicant. This is still a concern. I believe that the length of the truck they provide is 30 feet. There's a 48-foot length of the loading zone itself, which would include the loading berth and a possible dock where goods would be unloaded. What we would simply ask for from the applicant is that if trucks greater than 30-foot length are to be included, do they anticipate them encroaching into the public sidewalk? And if they do, by how much? As we looked at, there could be some concerns involving three-point turns for larger or longer vehicles, as well as when they are in the loading dock area, how far do they extend beyond that 48 feet if they are to, as well as being able to have room to unload and load goods. So what we're asking is that they provide information on proposed, and this goes for both the passenger drop-off and pickup, as well as the loading and unloading of delivery trucks. To allay our concerns, they provide information on a proposed traffic queue management system to provide us with more information on how they plan on alleviating some of those concerns. The remainder of the report goes into other considerations. I believe I touched on them with the ICC. These involve flood damage reduction, underground structural items, general means of egress, and city engineer and other items. Out of all of those, I want to read one more thing into the record, which was received this morning from a representative from DENREC, and this is involving water supply assessment and protection. And they are concerned with the parking garage below the hotel and dewatering. And what they are stating in here that they would like to be stated for the public record is that continual dewatering will be prohibited, and that by definition, any dewatering system or excavation is for a temporary and/or construction use only, and that they are still required to get permits and approval from DENREC prior to any excavation or construction activities. And that we ask that the applicant, if they are able to today, to address that concern as well.
In that DENREC email, were there also concerns about saltwater?
Correct. That was one of the reasons why they would not allow continual dewatering. The site has the potential to pull in salt water from the bay. This could impact both the City of Rehoboth and Henlopen Acres public drinking water wells. The department monitors across the state for saltwater intrusion through a network of monitoring and public wells. This operation could affect many drinking water wells in this area. So while this is a concern that they wanted to voice at this time, and I think that's important to voice that concern, this is yet again another one of these of these outside agencies within the state of Delaware that the applicant, like every other applicant, will have to go through for approval prior to getting any permits from the city.
But it sounds like they would not issue an approval yet, based on their concerns here. For one thing, it says they would like to see the updated plans, wouldn't we all?
Correct, and they would have to
So,
submit
yeah,
those to
okay.
DENREC.
Right.
And have them perform an official review.
Okay,
And then in which case, similar to the Office of the State Fire Marshal, Sussex Conservation District, and others, they would submit an application to those departments. Those departments would perform an official review. After that review is performed, we would get something back in writing, whether it's approved or denied, or to revise and resubmit. And again, all of those documents will be available to the public throughout the stage as well. So anyone at any time during this plans examining stage can submit a FOIA request and have access to look at those documents. And the city would not issue any building permits or any permits until all the outside agency approvals have been met. That ends the report.
I just have a couple of questions. Are the approvals that you spoke of, I am guessing, I hope, that they are going to be in writing? Is that correct?
Correct.
That the like from the fire marshal or whatever, there would be a letter with regard to these new plans, and the same with the DENREC questions here. That, in other words, we all just got this. You know, the applicant just got it. I'm assuming we just got it. So regardless of what is said in conversation today, I think the record would be more clear if there's a written response to this from the applicant and then a written response from DENREC to that. Would that be the way it would happen, or was it some?
Correct. That would be the general way a permit is handled. Even one, for instance, that wouldn't come to site plan approval if it's a smaller commercial project. Any outside agency approvals are required to be obtained and then submitted in writing to the Building and Licensing Department before we would approve any permit application.
Okay, and I have a question that goes back to something you said earlier with regard to the issues in terms of the floodplain and structure and so forth. And what you said, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the ICC is unable at this point in time to evaluate that set of issues in an appropriately comprehensive manner. And what I'm not clear on is at what point in time would they be able to evaluate those issues?
That would be, for a full comprehensive plan, would be for a permit submission packet.
So
where-
that would be, in other words, would they be submitting something that would come to the Planning Commission before we vote on this? Or is this something that they are unable to do until after that point?
This would be something that they would do after that point. They would submit to the city, and then we would then take that entire submission and submit it to third party for comprehensive review. And then during that time, they would review those, let the city know if they need any additional documentation, any additional drawings, clarifications of such, in which case we would act as the mediator and then get back with the applicant and then provide any of those additional documents, revised documents to that review service for those purposes.
And I'm sure you're aware we have some citizens who've expressed continuously over this period concerns about those issues. And so part of my inquiry here really is whether, whatever the appropriate point in the process is, that the documents coming out of that being made part of the public record. And, you know, I just want to be clear, since we have a public record about questions from citizens, I want there to be a public record that speaks to not necessarily those particular questions, but the general issues that have been raised.
Correct. So any type of permit submission is available to the general public under FOIA requests. With possible, special exceptions in certain cases with types of information, but these documents that we're talking about here, once the city receives them, the public, and they are, I want to make this perfectly clear, they're able to submit an online FOIA request on the city's website at any time, and they can ask for any documents, electronic or in paper form, to whatever breadth of scope that they wish, and the city is obligated as public servants to provide them with those documents to come in and look at, or in such cases to provide them in an email form.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I would like those documents to come to us as a courtesy copy or whatever, since we have gotten engaged in these issues. And so if they're public documents, obviously that would not be a problem.
Yeah, I would say that the Planning Commission, as anyone else at that stage, would simply have to fill out that sheet to ask for that, and the city would provide you with whatever information that you would like.
Corey, I have a question about the DENREC comment. It sort of ties into my concern about timing, too. The writing says that permanent dewatering is not permittable. What I'm uncertain about is there a need to permanently dewater? In other words, I want to hear a comment on that, because I'm concerned that putting off an issue to the actual permitting stage, if there is any uncertainty about the issue beforehand, it does a disservice not only to those that are supporting the project, but those that have concerns about it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, because I think I can answer this question and put this issue to rest.
Let us do this. Let me, if I can, get the building inspector to finish his report, and then we'll come to you, and then the planning commission may have questions of both of you. That work? Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll just have a debate all day.
There's no debate. There's not going to be permanent dewatering, period, end of story. DENREC misunderstood what it read. There's not to be any permanent dewatering. It's only during construction.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything else, Mr. Shinko, on your report?
No, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Yes, I have a question about the issue of the maneuverability of trucks coming into and out of the loading dock. If I understood what you said, that building and licensing is going to want more information on how they plan to deal with this maneuverability issue for trucks larger than 30 feet?
Correct. So this was part of the revised plans that were submitted after this report and as a response to this report. And so we have not had the time yet to fully examine all of those sheets in the time period since we've received them. That's something we'll look at. What I can say, from what I do know of, is that it appears to be that they are using a model of a total length of 30 foot of a box truck to show for maneuverability. And so what we would ask for in a setting like this is that the maximum length truck that is intended, or if there are other trucks that are longer, and to see what type of information they can provide to allay our concerns, because that is a concern.
Okay, well, that's basically my question, because in our record for today's meeting is correspondence from a member of the public pointing out that many, if not most, of the delivery trucks to large commercial facilities around town, and certainly including hotels with restaurants and venues for meetings and wedding receptions and so forth, are longer than 30 feet, in which case the maneuverability in a truck backing up or coming around the corner to get in there, there's a risk, to say the least, to any cars that are parked on the opposite side of Wilmington Avenue, particularly in terms of trucks pulling out and around that are longer than 30 feet, which apparently many, if not most, of those trucks are. So that I assume it's not just information that you're looking for. I would assume that you're looking for a feasibility study to show either they can or they can't do it, and or they're going to limit deliveries to the 30 feet if larger trucks can't be accommodated.
If I may, if the loading dock is code compliant, Corey can look at that issue and talk to the developer on the side to try and alleviate any concerns about it. But if it's code compliant, he can't necessarily require any changes as a result of that.
But one of the considerations that the Planning Commission has to deal with are public safety issues.
Agreed.
That extend way beyond code compliance. If code compliance were all that we were involved in, we really wouldn't need to be here, because we could leave everything to the building inspector. So this is a public safety issue, which I think needs to be addressed, and addressed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but Corey typically does that outside of this forum, and it goes into his recommendation.
Okay.
That's a fair assessment. I simply wanted to state that this is something that should be looked into
Thank you.
for the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike, let him move ahead.
Yes, I have one question for the inspector and perhaps for the attorney, our attorney, for the city, is that the definition of what a loading dock is, and I brought this up 2 years ago to the applicant, I brought it up a year ago to the applicant, and I supported their position that they only needed one loading dock as opposed to two, based on a whole set of other engineering issues called non-dominated sets. I won't get into that, but I did discuss it. But the code is extremely clear, and when they were given permission by the Board of Adjustment to have one loading dock, that's terrific. I think it's a great idea, actually. But a loading dock is defined with two things, two elements, and it's extremely clear, and it's plain language interpretation. says accommodation off the street for loading and non-loading of motor transport equipment and designed to provide adequate space for efficient maneuvering into and out of loading position at properly constructed docks located either within the building or in a yard on the same lot. That's unequivocal. They have the loading dock. They have not yet designed in, and it's possible to do it in a way that doesn't totally destroy what they want to do. But that's not my job. That's their job to figure it out. But as currently constructed with the Board of Adjustment approval, they still haven't created what's required by law in our code. And I
well,
don't
we will
know if
have an
that's a question or a
opportunity.
statement for the building inspector is, obviously your perception was different, but I go by the actual language specifically, explicitly.
Yeah, well, my suggestion is that we move forward with the applicant's presentation, and then any questions that you might have as a planning commission of both the building inspector and the applicant can follow that, if that's okay. Just like to get to the presentation level of this. And, yeah, Mr. Forston? Now I can see you.
Now it's your turn.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I will say that a hot day in Rehoboth is infinitely better than any day in Newcastle County, and I'm pleased to be in front of you again to discuss this project. I'm going to be very brief. I know our time is short. We've got a number of our experts here to more specifically address the issue, but I do just want to kind of lay them out. We're going to talk about off-street parking in the sense that to the extent we said anything inconsistent, I want to be clear. The 29 spaces on Baltimore Avenue are going to be valet parked, but in terms of underneath the building, underneath the hotel, that will all be self-park. So I want to make that point. Also, there had been, I think, some question last time about handicap spots, where did we need them and all. I mean, we went back to the codes, the building codes and whatnot. We're putting all the handicap spots underneath the building, which we can do pursuant to the building code, and which I think makes sense because our valets are not going to be handicapped, so there's no need for them to have a handicap spot on Baltimore Avenue. And then you're going to hear Jim Keeley, who runs other hotels here on the Delaware beaches, that we're going to be using an app for guests, so they will advise us before they get here whether they intend to park on site. And of course, if they're last to the party, they may be one of the ones who has to get valet parked anyway. But that's part of the process that we're going to have for that. On the loading dock issue, I mean, look, I get your all's perspective. You may recall last summer, I went out early one morning because the question had been asked, what was the distance from one side of the end of parking to the other side of the end of parking? And I thought we were all satisfied that there was more than sufficient room. I think the diagrams that we've submitted to the building inspector demonstrate that. I will point out, and you'll hear Mr. Keeley talk about this, the hotel itself expects 3 deliveries a month in terms of supplies. It is not the case that trucks are streaming in and out on a daily basis to supply the hotel the things it needs. The restaurant, 3 times a week. And these deliveries are all early in the morning. Nobody's bringing, a 50-foot tractor trailer in to do this because it's hard enough to just drive one of those through Rehoboth, let alone to a dead-end street. But I'll let Mr. Keeley talk more about that, as we've also described to you, and we committed to do, and we're still going to do. The retail space in our building along the boardwalk and along Rehoboth Avenue, currently not served by a loading dock, all has access to this loading dock. So if they want to take advantage and use that loading dock, it's there for them as well. Quite frankly, if our neighbors who don't have a loading dock and in fact are complaining about the truck traffic and maybe supplying them, if they wanted to take advantage of our loading dock, we'd be willing to work with them as well. Our structural engineer is here to talk about some of the questions that were raised with pulling back the walls. Remember, people were complaining that the underground parking was going to be too close. We've pulled it back 10 feet. We've got some diagrams, and he knows his stuff. I'll let him describe that. As I said earlier on this dewatering issue, I don't know how or why, but we're going to obviously have to do dewatering during construction. I mean, everybody does that when you're digging a foundation, but that's it. The plan is not for any dewatering thereafter on any sort of regular basis, and as we don't think that will be necessary. I'll just mention also that following the hearing last month that we had, Mr. Strange did submit some questions to us in writing. We did get those middle to end of last week. I submitted answers yesterday. It took us a little while to just get the answers all. And I know Mr. Strange has them. I don't know if he's had a chance to review them, but I'd like to think we've satisfactorily answered his questions. ICC did its letter. We looked at that letter. We agree with everything in that letter because what that letter says is when you submit your construction drawings and construction plans, you're going to have to address, and it cited lots of particular code sections from the International Building Code. It talked about the fire alarm, for example, and what it required. We will be doing all of that, but that's not part of site plan review itself. And finally, I will simply say I am the eternal optimist, as you all know. You set aside an hour. I'm going to sit down now, but I'm going to ask our experts to address a couple of these issues. I'm hoping, because I am an optimist, that at the conclusion of our presentation, you all can vote to approve our site plan. I would ask that it be approved subject to all the conditions that you imposed last August, except for the ones, obviously, that have been resolved by the Board of Adjustment. But, to the extent you want a structural engineering firm to be retained by the city, to the extent you want floodplain experts to look at what we're doing, we have no objection to that. We know our plans are going to be good, and our lenders are going to make sure they're good, and we want them to be good. So that is my optimistic desire for this afternoon. And with that, Jim, why don't we start with you, if you just want to address. Can you briefly, first off, can you state your name for the record?
Sure, I'm Jim Keeley. I work for Real Hospitality Group. We manage 120 hotels all over the U.S. We have about 12 hotels from Ocean City here to Lewis and in the Rehoboth area. I've been with them for 8 years, and in this area specifically. So, where should I?
Why don't we start with the valet parking? Can you describe that system?
Sure.
You probably need to get closer to the microphone.
I'm sorry.
That's right.
So it is a brand requirement of Hilton to use a communication platform called Kipsu.
They've already said that.
And Kipsu can communicate with guests before their stay, after their stay, during their stay. And they can communicate 3 ways: via text, via email, or through the Hilton Honors app. And our hotels reach out to all of our arriving guests 2 to 3 times before they arrive, just to ensure that we have the room type correctly, anything that they need for their stay. But in the case of the Belhaven, we would also ask what time they are arriving so that we could effectively manage the parking flow. And what that also does, using this app, is it allows us to get the guests checked in a very, timely manner due to making sure the room's ready, making sure that we're able to help them unload their car, but also we'll ask them if they plan on taking their car in and out, or do they intend to keep their car in the garage the entire time. If they were not going to use in and out privileges, we would use the satellite lot. And then that way, what that would do is all of the cars that aren't coming in and out of the garage would be in our satellite lot, which would also allot more room in the main garage so that as guests want to pull in to find a spot, they're able to do so.
Okay, and then can you also talk about the loading dock and the frequency and how that process works, types of trucks, et cetera?
Yes. Yeah, so most of our vendors arrive before 9 a.m. in the morning for the reason that they don't want to be caught in the beach traffic. And all of them typically are delivered in a box truck. So For an instance, a hotel will make an order in the first week of the month for all of their supplies for the month. Those are room supplies. So that would probably be between 2 and 3 times a month at a delivery for the hotel, for rooms, for any type of items that had to do with the hotel, because we use large vendors. So we can order everything that we need from 2 to 3 large vendors. Then the food purveyors, they would deliver 2 to 3 times a week based on the demands of the restaurant, because obviously for the freshness of the food and whatever that is on the menu, that would be more of a higher frequency. But that's all that we anticipate for that loading dock, the use of the loading dock.
Okay, so I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chairman, but at this point, I was going to ask Peter to come up and talk a little bit more, and then have our structural engineer speak. But if you have specific questions for Mr. Keeley, he's up here now.
Does anyone have any other questions of
I
this
just
gentleman?
want to have a follow-up question. My comments previously to the building inspector were not about the number of deliveries you were likely to have on any given day, week, or month, but the maneuverability of loading trucks, many of which, according to photographs and just common knowledge, are longer than 30 feet. Once a week, once a month, if it can't maneuver in and out because the truck is too large, that's a problem.
So, good question, fair question. Actually, Peter has those diagrams, and I was going to have Peter go through the diagrams with you on that particular question, if that's okay.
All right. Please.
Always
All right, thanks, John.
to hear from Peter.
Take the stand here.
Good
And this is
afternoon.
Peter Filati, he's been before you many times. He's our architect, and I'll let him take it from there.
Yes, sir. Welcome, Mr. Flott.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Okay, so this diagram right here is a diagram that shows, it's a planimetric diagram, okay, where it says Wilmington Avenue, that's Wilmington Avenue. So this is the two-way street and parallel parking on each side of the two-way street. Trucks will, this shows the way a truck will come down Wilmington Avenue. It will back up, and this is a 30-foot box truck. So this is what we submitted because we were told by Jim that we're only going to have 30-foot box trucks, okay? The space itself is much larger than that, but this is what was submitted, and so that's what you see here today. So a truck backs up, and basically, this is a strange diagram. The truck's really not that long. It's actually, this is the 30-foot dimension right here, and you can see the truck completely can go all the way back to the back of the loading dock, and there's plenty of room for him to be inside of the property and actually not even be all the way back in the back of the dock, because the dock is 48 foot long, okay? And the dock itself starts about 4 to 5 feet inside of the property, all right? So it's actually a very deep and kind of over-designed for a 30-foot truck, right? So here's a truck coming back out, and you can see that there's enough room for the truck to maneuver, cross over into the other lane a little bit, but there's plenty of room here for the truck. It gets close here, but it still is enough room. This is an 18 by 9 foot city lot. Cars are not really ever 18 feet long. Some pickup trucks maybe, but there's plenty of room there's room for that to work, right? So that's fine, and we're all good here right now. Everyone's saying, well, what about the 53-foot box truck in the picture of Mr. Trejos's memo, right? Well, fair enough. What about that truck? And why didn't we address that issue? Because we were told not to. But I know how some people insist, because I have a mother. And so, if someday that this hotel is sold and the next operator 15 years from now decides to start using trucks that are 53 foot long, which are exactly like the trucks in Mr. Trejos's pictures, you're going to see them. It's messy, but they're there, right? And maybe 15 years from now, they won't use 53-foot trucks. Maybe everything will arrive by drone. We don't know. It's beside the point. This is a 53-foot tractor-trailer truck, okay? in its movement, its turning movement, it comes up, it goes back, it comes in, and it also fits completely inside of the property line. It does, here's the end of the truck right there. So Corey, that's the answer. It's 6 inches, it's not really even 2 feet. So that is the front of the truck right there. There's the wheel, there's the cab, here's where the truck starts, and it fits all the way back in the back to the end of the loading dock, right? So this is the truck we're not going to use, and this is how the truck we're not going to use fits inside.
So are you comfortable with a stipulation that you will only have trucks up to a maximum of 30 feet?
I think we would be if need be, yes. But
You had mentioned, Mr. Follett, parallel parking on Wilmington. Is it not pull-in parking?
Pull-in parking, yeah.
The parking alignment on Wilmington for the public,
yes,
it's
pull-in
pull-in.
parking. I stand corrected.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if your measurements then and your
No.
routing was based on parallel parking.
Right, I'm sorry. It's measuring on pull-in parking. This, you can see here, this lot, this is a typical space right here, 18 by 20. Here's the other one. I think that we're a little bit, sometimes when you have a projection and my screen is not calibrated properly, this is a new computer. So this is an 18 by 9 foot space, even though it looks sort of fat. It's been stretched in the lengthways dimension, so I apologize for that. It's a new computer, sorry, Ann. But that is an 18-foot deep space. That would be a 9-foot wide space, and these are dimensions that all work. But you're right, it was pull-in parking, I apologize. So that is the way a 53-foot truck that we don't plan on using would work and fit on the site, to answer Corey's question in particular, right? All right, so back to the next issue, which I think we took a very close look at the way the parking, this is sort of a separate issue, but I know at some point one of the commissioners was interested in how exactly we were going to be able to fit the cars and have a fence work. So this now design shows exactly how the fence will work. These are the posts. They fit in alignment here. This is the line of it. And then we have a detail that we submitted to show more detail as to how the posts and the fence itself are able to work and still enclose and not impact the parking spaces. So we submitted that in the package of the 11th. Then the next thing I want to show you all is, and also we'll go backwards and we'll show that we had previously shown handicap spaces here. They're not here anymore, but we are leaving the spaces there wide enough so that if a guest wants to sort of maneuver between these two spaces, they can. And then I'll just walk you through how the lower level has been redesigned to accommodate a van space here, a van space here, an ADA space here, an ADA space here, an ADA space here, and an ADA space here. So this is 4 ADA spaces and 2 van spaces.
It's actually one more than is required.
Which is one more than is required. And the next thing I want to show you is, in this diagram, the way the lay-by will work. There's actually enough room for 3 cars to lay by if we're allowed to rent this or make a lease agreement with the city, which is, we think, the right way to do this world-class hotel, is to have enough room for 3 cars to lay by. This shaded-in area is actually the area that is for ADA drop-off in particular. It just shows a space that's 5 feet plus 3 feet wide and 20 feet long. So that's also indicated on this set of plans. And we think that with the 3 spaces here and with the app that Jim was recommending, intends on using, that we should be able to move cars in and out of the valet and have drop-off at the same time.
So under this scheme, how many parking spaces do you need to lease from the city?
I think that it's a total of 11 It's somewhere around 11 spaces that space occupies.
And I have one other general question.
Between 9 and 11, I'll say that.
All right. The latest set of drawings we got one that was amended 2 days ago, which is a little difficult because some of us prepare a little earlier for these meetings.
They've all been amended 2 days ago.
Okay, but I guess what I'd like to know is what was amended 2 days ago? If you can point out your last amendment. I don't know, was that a lot of stuff changed, or were there finite things that were changed in the last 2 days?
No, I believe that this location of this drop-off, showing 3 cars as opposed to 1, was an amendment. I think that we added this, just so you know, this diagram here is the same diagram that was on the civil drawings, but I put them on the architectural drawings as a change.
Okay.
Okay, so just for clarification. And then, what else? And I believe that maybe just the final layout, we had submitted this to Corey on the 11th, showing the concept of the spaces here. We had our parking consultant look at it one more time, and he basically asked us to move these 2 spaces back and to sort of straighten out this corner right here so it worked a little bit better. So functionally, we changed that a little bit. And that just, we just had them, they were in it to look at and talk about the loading, the timing for the loading. So we had them look at our garage again, and that's what they did.
Yeah, Mr. Flatt, I have a question on the ADA spaces. Unless I misinterpreted the federal code, when you have multiple parking lots, each have to be addressed individually as to ADA requirements. So the fact that you eliminated them in the remote parking lot, you can't. You still have to have ADA spaces that regular people can't park in.
So our ADA consultant very carefully explained to us that there is a subsection of the code that allows for this to be a complete and acceptable solution. I think there's a subparagraph 2 that they quote, and so this is a completely bulletproof ADA solution.
Okay, I'd like to get that information.
Yeah, it's in the response that I sent you.
Which I just got, okay.
Okay, but yeah.
Now, and just to further clarify, Mr. Strange, there is a separate set of, I'm sorry. I apologize. People sometimes actually now accuse me of talking too loud, so I sometimes stand too far back. Anyway, in your questions to us, you cited something from the federal building code, which only applies to federal buildings, that is, federal government buildings. Right. And it doesn't apply to this building. So just the International Building Code applies to this building, and it allows what we're doing. The federal building code does have that extra wrinkle that you talked about.
Okay. If I
But
made a
it-
mistake, I'll verify.
Yeah, the F.
Yeah,
The
I
F
mean-
in front of the code, that's what our guy said. The F means federal.
So I think this makes more sense. Let me talk to the microphone anyway. I think it makes more sense, why have a handicap spot in a place that's going to be valet parked? Let's have it on site. But that's what the International Building Code does allow, particularly for valet parking.
Okay. I think that's it. From my point of view, of any questions, happy to.
Anybody else from your team?
I think you had somebody, structural,
Yeah.
Yeah, Sanjay's going to talk a little bit about the foundation system.
And also address the dewatering issue in a little more detail.
Do you want to look at your sketch? I have it here.
Yeah, you have it there?
It's up there.
please come forward and identify yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Sanjay Khanna. I'm a partner with Tachacon Edelson Structural Engineers based in McLean, Virginia. We're a leading structural firm, have been in business since 1962 and worked on similar projects all over the country. So I've been here for 2 of the hearings before, and I think I've spoken on some of the questions that were asked. So I'm going to address, given the amount of time, I'm not going to get too technical, but let me first address the question about the use for permanent dewatering. We are not going to have any permanent dewatering on this project. So just without getting too technical, the way we're going to design this basement is as an inverted bathtub. which means we're going to provide waterproofing membrane underneath the mat foundation. We're going to have tie downs. And from the 100-year floodplain, which I believe is around elevation 13, down to the bottom of the mat, we're going to design it so that it can be lifted up in case of a 100-year flood. And the tie downs will design it. So the only dewatering will be needed during construction, which is allowed. Second thing that I'd like to address is in some of the previous, couple of the previous public hearings I attended, there was a question about the adjacent neighbors and the need for underpinning, because if you recall, our design was with the basement extending right up to the property line, which would have required either permanent or permanent underpinning, but would have required online or offline underpinning. So we've done that on pretty much all projects we do in the Washington, D.C. area. There's always adjacent buildings. We do underpinning. I've never seen an issue with that before. But since some of the neighbors were concerned about that, we agreed to actually completely take away the risk. And if you can look at those, the details that I've drawn over there, you can see that we have actually moved the basement wall away by 10 feet from the adjacent buildings. In other words, there will be no need for any permanent underpinning at all. So there is the risk to the adjacent building is completely gone. What we are going to do, though, is there'll be sheeting and shoring that will be designed by sheeting and shoring contractor, which will be 10 feet away with soldier beams, lagging, tiebacks, and heel blocks, as you can see on that section. You can also see there's going to be a mat foundation with the basement wall. The basement wall will have a slight amount of surcharge from the footings of the adjacent building, which is very minimal because it's pretty much just a one-story building. And we've drawn sections both the adjacent building with a slab-on grade or with a crawl space. So any issues the neighbors may have had in the past about having to temporarily underpin their building is all gone now with this new design. Are there any other questions structurally that you'd like to know?
Yes.
Sure.
Go ahead. One is, and I think it's very important from a code perspective, is what you talked about, what you've done in other states and other cities. That's because in those cities, they permit direct underpinning, period. They permit that in Washington, D.C. They permit that in New York City. They permit that in Baltimore. It's not permitted in Delaware, in Rehoboth Beach, period. And that's why you can't do it. That's why when you were here 2 years ago, or a year ago, and a year before that, I had pointed out that what was proposed couldn't be built. And you then came in with a proposal which verified exactly what I said. But at that point, you said, if you allowed direct underpinning, then you could still do what you wanted to do. And I did not say anything at that point because I usually don't speak unless I'm almost 100% sure of what I'm going to say, because I'm also an engineer. I verified it's not permitted unless magically somebody decided they would allow you to do that. So you have to do indirect to do what you wanted to do. But the other thing is, and it's really, again, my job isn't to design your building. You could build a safe building and not take it in 10 feet, which is, you're hurting yourself in terms of parking capability. And you can still achieve your objectives. But the overarching problem, and this is really an issue which I don't know whose drawings apply here, is Hillis Carnes no longer involved, or you're separate from that, or you're doing things that are different than what they recommended?
So, Mr. Strange, I actually did respond to your question. I know you had a question about Hillis Carnes. No, Hillis Carnes is the geotech engineer that we work with, so they're still involved in the project. What I responded to you was that your concern about the 1.5 safety factor and so what we're going to do is the Hillis Carnes report with the basement wall is meant for not the condition we have here. That's meant for a basement wall that is double formed and there's backfill on the back end. We're not going to have any backfill on this project. If you can see over there, there's going to be soldier beams that'll either be driven in or augured in. There'll be tiebacks. There's going to be rakers. And the backside is only going to have a slab-on grade. It's not going to be backfilled. So that's section 6.8 or whatever you were referring to, and I've sent you that response. You can read it. Okay. That does not apply to what we are doing on this project. There is no backfill on the backside of the retaining, on the basement wall here.
You're also, one of the things that concerned me is in laying the floor itself, there's a requirement under various codes as to what the composition is of the soil and the dirt that you're building on. And right now, you're building on essentially unconstrained sand. And so you're going to have to essentially install a material underneath of the concrete, both horizontally and vertically. And the vertical section is going to, as the way it's designed right now, is in fact going to go on the other client's property. Now, and that goes back to what I said earlier, is you solve the problem in a way, and again, it's not my job to design it, but now you've impacted the capability of the hotel to have more parking spaces that they originally had on their lot have now been eliminated.
Mr. Strange, please speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I shouldn't get into helping you design your hotel. That's your obligation. But you can achieve the objectives and increase the size of the number of parking spaces availability. But even with this design, you still have the problem where the foundation floor butts up against the adjoining property because you cannot put in the required 12 to 15 inches of underburden that's going to be there both vertically and horizontally, which is required to do in a situation like this, and then waterproof it as well. So it looks good on paper, but the reality is in the field, you're not going to be able to do that.
Okay, so Mr. Strange, as far as you're talking about the slab-on grade that's up against the neighbors in that 10-foot section of our building, am I right? And the sub-drainage, I mean, the subgrade for that slab-on grade, that's what you're referring to in that section?
I think so, yes.
All right. That portion is, all it needs is some gravel underneath it and a vapor barrier, and we do it all the time. It's going to be on our property, and Hillis Cons is the one that's going to tell us about it. It's essentially a slab-on grade. All it's supporting is people walking on top of that. We've also moved the columns back 10 feet so that there's no footings in that 10-foot zone. And we just wanted to be completely cognizant of the concerns that the neighbors brought up, that we don't do any underpinning. So that's why we eliminated underpinning, direct or indirect. And we want the project to go ahead. You're right, we could have probably insisted that we could do indirect underpinning like we had in the previous scheme and gain more parking in the basement. But we chose to do it this way so that we can reduce any concern from our neighbor. And the slab-on grade will be designed fine. I've done that on many projects. And with the assistance of the geotech engineer, Hillis Cons, we can accomplish that.
All right.
We'll agree to disagree, so you can move ahead.
Well, that's where we have a permit process, and as the gentleman there said, we will submit our drawings. They'll have a third-party structural engineer review our design, and if there are any concerns, we'll address it. So, I mean, the other concern is I could also cantilever that and not even have it sit on it. That costs us more money, but I can cantilever that slab on grade by 10 feet and just put a void underneath it. I mean, there are ways to do it, but I'm confident that this design will work, and we will submit drawings that will show that, and we'll submit calculations, and with third party if that questions. I've been doing this for 45 years, so it's not my first project.
All right, Mr. Forston. Any other member of your group?
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Not in court today, I was in court yesterday.
It'll go to his head, don't say.
I am a commissioner in Chancery in Virginia, so I've heard that before.
All right, well, I'll say it again then. But no, this was all the experts that we had planned to speak to you today, unless there are specific questions you have that we have not addressed, and then one of our team will answer those questions. Otherwise, I'm content to let the public speak. Time permitting, I might want to rebut anything somebody says, but I probably am willing to let that go. I continue to remain optimistic, but I hope that the information you all have received just now gives you greater comfort than you had when you first started.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Should we wait? Like, I have a whole bunch of questions, but should we wait for the public to speak?
No, I think we go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
we'll go first? Okay. It gets back to your point. I've got 31 questions. I'm still not clear, even what was just stated, that and we just got these drawings literally this morning. The foundation set that was dated 27 March 23, and we just got on June 18th, 2025. Is that diagram still valid now in light of what's being presented here? That document's no longer valid.
Yeah, no. That was a different design completely. Those drawings showed a spread footing,
Right.
and it showed a building going to the property line.
Can I just jump in 1 second?
Yes.
Because I was confused about that. There were drawings from 2023 that were in the record for today.
Right.
As part of the supporting documents. So I defer to the engineers here for the technical questions, but just as a non-engineer, are those drawings then not relevant, or are they still relevant?
So at our last hearing, I don't think it was Corey, I think it was the gentleman from, someone asked to know what was the direction of the design that we had done to date, okay? That was the direction of the design that we had done to date, and I submitted those drawings just as a reference, so you could see this is the level of detail that we do in our drawings. This is a solution that was appropriate in 2023, but those drawings are not relevant to this submission right here. They're just an example of an approach of how to do foundations in a place like this.
Okay. I would have appreciated.
And I know we knew that it was going to be a little bit of a hornet's nest ending, but someone asked for them, so we gave them to them.
Can they not be labeled as such?
Sure, they can be. They can be relabeled as such.
Through the record to try to sort out what's
Microphone.
relevant and
Yeah.
what's not relevant.
Microphone, Julie.
Not applicable.
Talking to your mic.
Fair enough.
I was
okay,
going to say
so-
it would be helpful if they would be labeled as such.
Yeah, there's a title on those drawings, and the drawings do refer to what they
Those
were.
drawings that we just got that were labeled then are no longer valid now.
They weren't valid at the beginning of this round of public hearing.
But there was no way for us to know that.
I knew that this would be a little bit of a confusion thing, but
Well,
gentleman
we
from
were
Wallace-
uninformed. I mean, that's the whole reason we're doing this is to become informed.
fine, I'm explaining to you the situation.
Okay, so that explains why they're not valid. Now we have new drawings that are valid, and these drawings we just got are the current drawings, this big package.
I don't know what drawings you're holding in your hand, sir.
So they may not be valid.
These are the drawings that we just talked about, 3/30/23.
That we got on June 25th yesterday, so they're invalid.
Correct.
So,
We're circling back to the same conversation we just had.
okay, so where are the drawings that are valid?
They are the 11 by 17 set.
So we don't have D-size drawings for that?
Yes, you have them as well.
We
submitted drawings.
Mike, we have drawings dated 6/24/25. Do you have those?
Site plan cover sheet, they're small, it's a smaller batch.
Are they in this big package too?
They're on the agenda.
They were on the top of it. So the bigger one
Okay.
was the one from 23, and then this smaller
So
one.
we just got them on June 25th?
Correct. Yeah, that's true, yes.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
And you developed, these are indicating that the last time these were revised was 6/24, which was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And this was yesterday, and so we're just getting them now. So all the drawings we had previous didn't apply. Or you have current drawings that are the real drawings, correct? This is now the real drawing going forward.
Correct.
Okay. So what we had before, and there's been some changes.
I explained to
these
you what the
drawings.
changes were.
Right. And
Three
right,
cars shown versus one car.
Right, and the one thing about the stairway, which you corrected, and it's fine.
That was in the 611 set.
Right. Okay. It clears that up pretty good. Apparently, I asked a question about IBC person loading versus structural loading.
Mr. Strange, please speak into my.
Versus structural loading, and I'm trying to look here because I just got this. And it indicates that up to 1,933 persons. Is that the anticipated actual real person loading you expect, or that's under the International Building Code structural issues? It wasn't clear what the response was. Do you need this?
What is the total human capacity for the building, I believe is the question that was
Right,
asked.
in other words, what do you
And
expect
the
to
answer
happen?
is, According to the code, 1,933 people.
So it's
That's the
possible
answer to
that
the
could happen.
question.
Okay. That has other
Let's be
implications.
clear, because I thought the question when we were looking at it was a little, there's two different questions you could be asking. How many people do you normally expect to have, 4 to a room?
What can you
106
have, right.
rooms? Your question was, what's the total maximum capacity? Your question was, what's the total maximum capacity based on the structural elements?
I was trying to get some-
That's the 1,900 number.
Based on IBC standards.
Right. Now, the fire marshal may come in and specify a different number.
Oh, sure.
And that's what I was trying to get some handle on because it was,
I think the fire marshal will require a lesser number in
No,
terms of capacity.
wrong.
Well,
The fire marshal will use the IBC occupancy code to determine the occupancy of each room in the building.
Right.
And typically, in assembly spaces such as this, there may be a sign out front that says maximum capacity
XYZ, right.
75 people or 150 people. Now, we all know that 150 people, 15 square foot per space, that means
Right.
a 15 square, everyone is, you could get, in theory, 500 people in this room. Will there ever be 500 people? No. That's why it seems ridiculous that there's 1,933 people in this building. It will never be there.
Right.
But that code is used to measure occupancy maximum.
and there's one exception to that, which is in our code, and in fact, the fire marshal may, I have no idea, about higher standards apply. It can be the unique combination of things that are in your building, how you've designed it, that results in a necessity to have a factor of X. That's where I was just trying to get at too. But I accept the current answer. The stairwell issue you already addressed, and we got to that. You also talked, I was concerned in looking at the entrance of the slope as to whether in fact it was code compliant, and the letter that you sent me indicated it was, and I guess Corey, you were comfortable that the slope did meet the IBC requirements as far as the slope getting down and into the building. Is that correct, or am I making a misassumption?
If I could answer that, that is something that I personally have not reviewed, but that will be a requirement during the plans examining phase.
Okay, the applicant thought it was, that's what you responded to me, and it still remains to be
Yeah, It
determined.
is designed per building code.
Mr. Strange, for a moment, I have extra copies of the questions that he sent to us last week with our answers. I don't know if you have copies or not. I could hand out copies to all of you. It might help you follow this discussion.
Well, we're down to about 3 minutes left.
Oh,
And so I think quite frankly, I can't speak for the commission. We haven't voted, haven't acted, but I would not be surprised if the consensus is to move this to another hearing and certainly distribute this so that we have that information sooner than later. That would be helpful.
I'll send it to Ms. Womack.
Okay.
She can upload it to the website and distribute copies, or I can also give you hard copies now. if you
That'd
want.
be fine. That way it's done. Does any other commissioner have any questions at this point?
Do we
I'm
ha-
sorry, I do.
Okay.
So that document in the lower corner is dated June 20 of 2024. Where is that? Is that on the agenda? I'm having a hard time seeing that on the online documents. Like, what's the title of on the agenda? Like, which link do I push?
The one that says,
Oh, it's actually attached to what you just gave us. Did you attach it to the responses to Mike Strange's questions? Because that's how we got it. Is that where it is? It's part of the response to Mike Strange's questions? Is it
that drawing, that diagram there is
Yes.
part of Mr. Strange, answering Mr.
It
Strange's
is, okay, so
question.
so it's attached to.
But that
They're
drawing.
in the
It's not on
record?
the agenda yet.
They're not, in the okay,
Because we just got it at 11 o'clock this morning.
okay.
Mr.
Got it.
Chair,
Yep.
I still have 20-some questions. Are we going to defer that to next week
I'm
or
gonna-
next month or whatever?
I'm going to
But I am confused about one thing with timing, and that is, as my colleague just pointed out, these are dated June of '24, but the whole idea and the requirement of moving in 10 feet did not come about until a Board of Adjustment hearing some months after that. So how do you match that up? That, how is this plan current when the Board of Adjustment had a specific requirement for the 10 feet setback?
We're talking about 25. I think the Board of Adjustment might have been 24.
If that says June 24, 2024,
It does.
it should say 2025.
Got
Oh,
it.
so it's just dated wrong?
That makes sense.
Wrong year. Good day, wrong year. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right. Well, that's going to be important for the final record, but okay, I get it now.
All right, we need to have public comment if we can,
He's
and
got
then we can come back and decide what the next step is, if that's the
Yeah,
right way to do it.
I'm very concerned that we have a number of people waiting,
Right.
and I want to get to that public comment.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Mr. Forston, thank you for working with us on the timing. That will be a practice going forward, just so you know. All right, this is portion of the meeting for public comment. Anyone here to address this application, please come forward, state your name, your residency or address or something similar, and speak for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm Dr. Michael Treos. We're property owner, adjacent property owners to the project here. Just a couple of notations. If and when this plan does receive site plan approval and future documents will be available by FOIA request, two questions then have to be asked. How do I know when documents are submitted for me to submit a FOIA request? How will I know as an adjacent property owner to be able to then ask for a FOIA request? That's number one. Number two, if upon receiving those documents and I have concern about them, do the adjacent property owners have the ability to submit comments to building and licensing with regard to those concerns? I mean, obviously, as you have just seen today, we have a whole new set of plans. The public was not available to see them. I didn't see them. I have no idea what's going on. Sanjay did some additional engineering drawings. I haven't seen those. I haven't had the opportunity to critique them. How are these all going to be put into the public record? How do I get them via FOIA? How do I know if they even have been received for me to request a FOIA request? I'd like maybe someone to be able to respond how that's all going to occur in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Anyone else, please? Yes, please come forward.
It's not about the hotel, but if you...
Are you Jan
Oh, Jan
Conacy?
Conacy, but if you park downstairs in the parking lot and you didn't pay, because that's the normal practice in the city for meetings, you will get a ticket. If you get a ticket, Margaret said, bring it into the front desk downstairs, and they will take care of it.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's the best public comment we've ever had.
That was refreshing.
Yeah.
Anyone else, please? Yes, sir.
I'm Harvey Schulman, a homeowner in Rehoboth. I'm not here to speak for or against this project. I'm here to say something about the process.
Yes, sir.
In the past, the Planning Commission has found itself in unpleasant situations where it's gotten documents just hours or days before being asked to vote. And that's turned out to be a real problem on appeal and on appeals to the courts. So whichever way this goes, and I don't know whether the latest documents are things like, obviously not changing the color of a room, but something like that, or whether it's more significant. But what the gentleman said previously, the public needs to know what these things are. They need to be available. They're supposed to be filed, 28 days before a meeting. We know when there have been minor changes in the past, the Planning Commission has allowed that on whether it's a subdivision or a site plan ordinance. But this is pretty significant. It's a large building that's going to be there for a long time and have positive and maybe some negative impacts. So I really urge you to take a look at these things, not just delay for delay's sake, but to make sure you're not falling into the same problems that happened in the past. I think the gentleman raised a good question about availability. When things are filed, when will they be available? The public, I think, is assuming that they'll be available 28 days before a meeting, because that's when things are typically supposed to be filed, unless you set another timeline. But if they come in later than that, people have to know. My second comment is it's really a question on the loading dock. I'm not sure how these things work in terms of, there's a truck, I saw the diagrams, they show a truck and it's fitting into space. I don't know what the distance is to get things in a truck, out of a truck. Some of those things on the longer truck showed it seemed to be like with inches of the back of the wall. So again, I don't have a position on this, but I think it's more than just the size of a truck. You need to be realistic about what needs to be delivered from that truck, taken out, whether there's other equipment and that sort of thing. And I just urge you to take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Alison Blythe. I'm the other adjacent property owner to the project. I just want to reiterate what Dr. Trejo said about the communication and how we will know what's going on and how that's going to be delivered to us going forward. Also, on the delivery end of things, I have a very tiny restaurant. Pretty much, I use a lot of the big food distributing companies, and it's been a long time since I've seen a 30-foot truck on the big companies that come down here. So, and for my own little restaurant, I have 4 deliveries a week, and often they have to have either a ramp that goes off the back to disembark, or you have a lift, which is probably, I'm guessing, around 6 to 8 feet off the back, where they bring the produce and the stuff off, and then they drop it down on a lift type situation. So there needs to be room for that. And it's either that, but typically it's one of those long things that you pull out and put down, and then that's numerous feet off the back. But yeah. And also, I just feel that, to make a decision based on something you got yesterday is very premature. I'm just concerned about my building. It's, and I appreciate, your concern as well for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? This is the opportunity for the public to speak concerning this application, please. All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment. And I think probably it's a good time, since we've used our time for this application, I think it's probably a good time to verify the meeting notice. Ms. Womack, would you do that, please?
A little out of order here. The agenda for the Planning Commission regular meeting was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on June 16, 2025. The agenda was amended and reposted on June 25th. Public notice for public hearing of site plan review application number 1221-05, Belhaven Hotel for the property located at 2 Rehoboth Avenue was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on June 4th. The public notice was published in the Cape Gazette on June 6th and June 10th, and in Delaware State News on June 6th and June 11th. Notifications specific to this project were mailed out to property owners within 200 feet, and signage was posted on the subject property. You want me to do the next one right away?
Yes.
Public notice for preliminary review of major subdivision application number 1024-14, Oceanside Reserve for the property located at 20699 Coastal Highway, was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on June 4th. The public notice was published in the Cape Gazette on June 6th and June 10th, and in Delaware State News on June 6th and June 11th. Notifications specific to this project were mailed out to property owners within 200 feet, and signage was posted on the subject property.
All right. Okay, this is at a good point. I think, what's the pleasure of this group?
Make a motion?
Oh, a motion, please.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing to our July meeting, because we've received a lot of information in the last 48 hours, and both the commission and the public needs to have time to digest all of that new information.
I second. I second that motion because I still have 20 questions that haven't been answered on the current plans, which may be God knows what when we look at the real plans.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Is there any discussion of this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we will reschedule or continue the public hearing for this application at our July meeting.
Yeah, point of
may I-
information, when
may I-
is our,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was going to put on the record, what is the date of our July meeting?
The fourth Friday of July.
Okay, sorry.
No Thursday meeting?
We don't
Don't
know
know
yet. We don't know yet, but maybe not.
Your Honor, if I may make two suggestions. Because things have kind of come in a little piecemeal, although we've been responding to things on a piecemeal basis, and that's part of the reason why. My suggestion is that the Tuesday after July 4th, which I believe is the 8th, no later than that date, let us submit a complete package of everything that goes before. This is all the relevant stuff that is in front of you so that you don't have to worry, well, was it from this date or that date? We will give you one comprehensive set no later than the Tuesday after July 4th, if that's okay with folks. And then my other request would be, I mean, we did get some questions from Mr. Strange last week, but it wasn't 20. So again, if Mr. Strange has questions that he can get to us in advance of the hearing so that we can put together responses to those questions in advance of the hearing, we will endeavor to get those responses out to you as quickly as we can to try to save time and make sure we're able to address those
I
questions.
appreciate that, but you're going to be sending us drawings that are different than the drawings that we just currently created questions from. So I can't do them in advance because I don't know what I'm getting.
I mean, you've got 20 questions now. You only gave us 9 last week. So, I mean,
Well, to be very blunt, this is a complex
Mike,
project.
I don't want to speak for you, but I do think that core drawing set that was amended June 24th, you're not going to have necessarily a change from that. It's the ancillary support documents that you're going to put in one package.
nothing is, we're not making any changes to the drawings that you have in front of you at this point, that package that we're going to put together. But it's going to be the comprehensive set so that everyone, you know, to the extent there was reference to something from 2023, which was only introduced kind of as demonstrative more than anything else. But I want you all to have and I want the public to be able to see the complete set.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. Would appreciate
That's what
you're
we're-
doing that
That's
by.
what we're voting on, is the
Yeah,
final set.
I appreciate that
I make
suggestion.
sure it's
And-
eminently clear because we've got
Could
drawings.
we all wait and be recognized by the chair
sorry.
before speaking? Thank you.
So I think it's a great idea, but appreciate if you would do that. Mr. Strange may not be able to come up with the questions for documents he hasn't seen yet, so we'll deal with that. I'm sure he will deal with that after July 8th and get back to you. I think that's would be the process, and I would appreciate your doing this.
I don't mean to foreclose in any way other questions that he or others may have, whether they come up after you get the package or whether they come up at the hearing in July. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, to the extent he knows he has questions now, to the extent we can get those questions in advance, it would help us because it would make the hearing more efficient and all that sort of good stuff.
All right. Any other comments from the Planning Commission?
One quick comment. I appreciate your offer to get that material in. We actually do our homework and try to read these things carefully. And it would be just extremely helpful if there were a list of the documents you're putting in, which is not just the title of the document, but like that document from 2023. I would not have gone back to agendas from 2023 looking for it if I'd known it was just there as a demonstration. I now understand why it was there, but it would have been really helpful to have that somewhere, like in a label or an outline or something.
I will do it. The cover letter that accompanies everything will list the item with a brief description of why it's part of the package.
Thank you.
All right. See you in July.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we're going to
10-minute
take a break,
maybe?
10-minute break.
10-minute break.
And the next matter is Oceanside Reserve. All right, let's go. All right, let's reconvene, please. The next matter on the agenda is a preliminary review of a major subdivision application number 1024-14 Oceanside Reserve. Is there anyone here on behalf of the applicant? Actually, first we'll ask the building inspector for his report and then come to the applicant if that's all right. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just bringing up the site plan for view while I give my report.
Yes, sir. Good, thank you.
Not here. There it is.
I'm glad he's going to be up there. That's great.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about that. Where is she?
She's up in the audience, but
Where? Okay. All right, sir. Before beginning your presentation, I'd like to note for the record that Commissioner Susan Stewart has recused herself from participating in this proceeding as a member of the Planning Commission. All right, sir.
Good afternoon again. We're here today for application number 1024-14, site location 20699 Coastal Highway, tax map number 334-2009-7.00. The applicant is Cape Communities LLC. They're represented today by David Hutt Esquire of Morris James. The property owner is Ocean Baymart. They're here for a preliminary plan review for a major subdivision. They are seeking to subdivide that parcel, as I previously identified, into 31 individual lots. The subject parcel is located within the C1 Central Commercial District. As I did with Belhaven, I do not plan on reading this report word for sake of brevity, but what I will do is go over some of the items that I would like to highlight for the Planning Commission.
Yes, sir.
Most of these comments are separated into two portions. The first portion comes under Chapter 236, Article 5, Design Standards, specifically applicable to major subdivisions. And the second portion are simply additional comments for consideration. So with that, I'll jump into design standards. The first thing I'd like to point out is the right-of-way width requirements are 60 feet for collector streets. As Reserve Drive is the principal entrance for the residential development, it is considered by staff to be a collector street. The primary plan depicts a 50-foot right-of-way width and is not consistent with the collector street standard, or rather a minor street. The public street alley is shown with a 25-foot right-of-way, but the width of the right-of-way is not prescribed for alleys serving residential developments, and the width to be allocated is left to the judgment of the Planning Commission to establish, as this is currently a Zone C1, not residential. The next item is that the subject site includes an old parcel of land that served as an access road previously that is currently a deeded portion of the overall site. This area previously provided access from the existing commercial site to Terrace Road. The plans show this access road will be terminated and will dead end behind lots 4 and 5. Therefore, the requirements to dedicate additional width for Terrace Drive right-of-way is not included in the scope of this application. Following that, dead-end streets. The proposed alley shown on the plans cannot be considered a dead-end street, as the code requires that the associated lands be residentially zoned. As this site is currently zoned C1, the provisions exempting the alley from the standards of typical roads do not apply. Specifically, the section of code 23621M1, dead-end streets, cul-de-sac of a permanent nature shall be not longer than 400 feet and shall provide a turnaround at the end with a radius of 40 feet, while the alley segment beyond the intersection is shorter than 40 feet, or, excuse me, 400 feet. It does not meet the subsequent code standards to be considered a short dead-end street, and therefore a turnaround meeting design standards must be included. This follows in the subsequent code section 23621M2B. All lots that abut the dead-end street are solely within an R1 single-family residence district or an R2 general residence district. Since this site is not zoned R1 or R2, it cannot be considered a short dead-end street and therefore cannot use the design exceptions detailed in 23621M3. After that, I'll move on to lot design. 236-23C, I'd like to highlight, except for lots fronting on an approved short dead-end street, each lot must front upon a public street that is at least 50 feet wide. Reserve Drive shows a right-of-way width of 50 feet, but only a 34-foot wide portion devoted to vehicular use. Notwithstanding the need to reclassify Reserve Drive as a collector street and increasing the right-of-way width to 60 feet, compliance with the standards of 236-23C may take priority. One comment for utility and water course easements. There's an existing drainage utility easement shown between lots 16 and 17. That shall remain. This easement creates significant restrictions for lot 16 in that there does not appear to be sufficient width or area to locate a driveway or other structure to access the building envelope. Detailed measurements are requested to be provided to discern the exact clearance between the lot lines and the easement. One of the things I also want to mention involves double frontage. Some of these lots do have double frontage. Under lot design 23623F, double frontage and reverse frontage lots shall not be approved unless, in the judgment of the Planning Commission, such frontage lots shall be required to establish a buffer zone and/or screen planting. The lots shown with the double frontage are not permitted unless the Planning Commission determines they meet the buffer or planting requirements. Under additional comments, I'd like to say that it is due to the design comments that were provided, it is the position of the department that the subject parcel be rezoned to R1 or R2 prior to the approval of any subdivision or site plan in order to comply with the above code provisions. After any change in zoning designation, the applicant shall revise the proposed plans to adhere to the design standards established in the corresponding zoning district section above. We have some exhibits A, B, and C. I would like to say that they are available for view, and if you have questions, we can answer them. But in conclusion, I would like to say that the plan suggests that the developer is using R2 lot design standards as most of the front yard setback distances show a 10-foot offset. It should be noted that R1 and R2 districts require a 15-foot rear yard setback, but currently the plans show a 10-foot setback. In pursuing rezoning, the applicant should consider other requirements of other code sections and the implications of these requirements on site design, particularly in light of the continued presence of the adjacent C1 parcels that are closer to the Route 1 there, and their structures. By pursuing a rezoning of the subject site to a R1 or R2, care should be taken to avoid the inadvertent creation of zoning nonconformities on separate remaining C1 parcels. For example, zoning section 27025B states where the boundary line dividing a commercial and residential district is a rear property line, there shall be a rear yard on the lot in the commercial district of at least 5 feet. The rear yard of the lot in the commercial district shall be bounded by a screen in order to shield or obscure the lot from those in the abutting residential district. Also, due to the site's location adjacent to coastal highway, the intended transition of principal use from commercial consistent with the underlying C1 zoning district to a residential use and the inconsistency of the residential proposal with the most recently adopted comprehensive development plan, the plan may require review and approval by the Office of State Planning Coordination through the PLUS process. Care should be taken to look over the requirements of the PLUS submittal process and considered by the applicant. B&L continues and will continue to examine the relevant standards for submitting through this and work with both the Planning Commission and the applicant. Also, I would like to say, in conclusion, all outside agency approvals shall be obtained, and copies of the approvals shall be provided to the city for recordation prior to the issuance of a final approval. And I'll end the report there.
Anyone have any questions of the building inspector? Is there an issue about mapping here? The city maps?
I think that was on the last case, or is this case?
I don't know if it applies. Does the lack of a city map, which we've established we don't have an official map. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We've established we don't have an official map, which has certain implications for how things occur. I don't know if in this case it's applicable. It's definitely applicable in the previous case. But does it apply in this case? Because we would in fact, well, no, we're not abandoning anything. I don't think it does.
I don't think.
But I do have a question of just sequencing. As has been pointed out, do we proceed on the basis that this will be rezoned to R something? Or does it have to be pre-stated that it's either R1 or R2 in advance in order to continue?
Well, I think
Even
the
if it's not
recommendation
approved yet, but just working on that assumption.
Yeah, I think the recommendation of the building inspector is that it should be rezoned.
Normally, we don't make recommendations other than discuss code compliance, but due to some of the code sections that we highlighted here, some of the exceptions that were taken can only be taken if the property is zoned residentially, which is why we made that statement.
And then it's which residential designation should be used?
R2, I think. Is it R2? Is it?
He said the setbacks are consistent with R2.
Yeah.
That's what they indicate.
Yeah.
However, that is completely at the
Right, yeah.
purview
I mean,
of the applicant.
there have been other projects where, we would perhaps make that as a condition, but it seems like it's your recommendation that that come first. And Nick is saying that as well?
I would suggest that it be considered by the applicant prior to proceeding too far down the line.
Okay.
And I would hesitate to issue approvals contingent on a rezoning approval.
Right, okay.
Just because that oftentimes is not a sure thing by any stretch.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Was that a yes or a no?
sure, maybe.
Okay, I thought so. Anyone else? All right, may the applicant, Mr. Hutt, are you prepared to move forward?
Yes, sir. For the record, my name is David Hutt, an attorney in Georgetown with the law firm of Morris James. Before I go too far, and knowing that my time is precious, I did want to thank Ms. Conasay for her public service announcement earlier. Although I would note that I didn't know that was a rule, and I wondered if in addition to voiding any tickets you got, if I could get a refund for any monies I've paid. But anyway, with setting that aside, and I hope to be able to answer a number of the questions that the Planning Commission just had. As I begin, I do represent Cape Communities LLC, the applicant requesting the subdivision that you see now on the screens around the room. With me to help answer any questions that may arise, sitting in the audience, about 2/3 of the way back in the room, are Joe Reed and Brent Reed, principals with Cape Communities LLC. They are the contract purchaser of the property, as well as the proposed development group. People sitting along the wall next to me just a moment ago were individuals with the Pannoni Group. Mark Davidson, the vice principal with Pannoni, and also the principal land planner, and also Eric Wall, the senior landscape designer with the Pannoni Group. Certainly, this property does not need any introduction, I'm sure, to anyone in the city with respect to its orientation, its location, its current status. It's one of those properties that it depends on how long you've been affiliated with Rehoboth Beach as far as living here, visiting, as to how you describe what was there. Because at the Baymar Shopping Center, there's been an A&P grocery store for people who have been here for some length of time, a Gold's Gym, a Citizen Bank. Wingate Neschenbaugh, the surveying company, was located there. There was a skateboard park there, and other things, a glass shop, a dollar stop. Certainly, Emmert Auction Gallery is located there. The post office was there at one point. So it gets referenced by many people as various things over time. This afternoon, as was indicated when it was introduced, we are here for a preliminary review of the subdivision that seeks to create the 31 lots that you see here on the screen in a community that would be proposed to be named Oceanside Reserve. To get through a little bit of just the nuts and bolts of this, the property is 7.7 acre, actually a little more than that, 7.74 acres, and the site is oriented so that north is up on the screen. And so starting with the north side, the property is adjacent to single-family residential detached homes that are situated along Scarborough Avenue Extended. Moving in a clockwise direction to the eastern side of the property, those would be more single-family detached lots that are along Silver Lane that are part of the Silver Lake Shores community. Moving to the southern boundary of the property, which also is, of course, as you likely are aware, is also the municipal limits of the boundary of the city of Rehoboth Beach there. So the properties on the southern side of the subdivision that you see on the screen would not be in the city. They're in the unincorporated areas of Sussex County. But those are, again, single-family detached homes with lots along Terrace Road and Silver Lake Manor. And then moving to the western side of this project, of course, Route 1 would be the primary road that everyone's familiar with. And you can see that there are two areas that are not shaded in or rendered, and those would be the two commercial lots that would remain between this residential project and Route 1. And of course, the entrance that is shown there is an existing entrance that everyone is familiar with, I'm sure. The zoning classification of the property, that's already been discussed a little bit, is the city's C1 Central Commercial District. This image you see on the screen is a relatively recent aerial image that shows the current status of the property, which, again, I'm sure everyone here is very familiar with. The zoning map, as I just mentioned, the property is shown as the C1 Central Commercial District. These two maps are also, of course, part of the Planning Commission's consideration as it considers any application. On the left-hand side, you have the 2020 state strategies map as they're promulgated by the Office of State Planning Coordination. As you can see, this entire property, as well as just about everything east of Route 1, is within the state investment level 1. The state would tell you that investment level 1 reflects areas that are already developed in an urban or suburban fashion, where infrastructure is existing or readily available, and where future redevelopment or infill projects are expected and encouraged by state policy. And that's pointed out just to note that these are areas where the state anticipates and encourages growth around municipalities and in municipalities. On the right-hand side of the screen is an excerpt from the city's 2020 Comprehensive Development Plan. As you can see, the property's designation is commercial, which of course matches the C1 zoning classification that we talked about just a moment ago. I went through some of the older history of the property just a few seconds ago, but certainly the more recent redevelopment history of the property includes the proposed beach walk community. And the image showing the proposed beach walk community is on the screens around the room. That process began in June of 2015. when Ocean Bay Mart submitted a site plan to the city proposing to have the property remain as one parcel and creating a condominium regime with 63 residential units. You can see on the bulk of the property, there were single-family detached homes. There was 58 of those. And then right near the entrance, right where the cursor is located now, there was a group of 5 attached single-family homes, again, for a total of 63 residences that were proposed for the project at that time. That application wound its way through processes here that we won't review, and then ultimately through various levels in the Delaware court system, and concluded in September of 2022 with a decision by the Delaware Supreme Court. To be clear, that was a completely different project from what's in front of the Planning Commission today, and a completely different developer is part of this today, what we have. As the project went through those processes, more tenants left the project or the center, and as you can see with the image on the right-hand side of the screen, the largest image that is shown, that is a photograph taken from this week indicating the current status and condition of much of the property. And certainly that photograph paints the picture of the obvious need for the redevelopment of this site. There are always, of course, the obvious benefits of redevelopment. As you improve a neighborhood, you improve the streetscape, you improve the aesthetics, you improve various things. And as I go through this presentation, I'm going to highlight a number of the benefits that the proposed redevelopment of 31 single-family homes would have for not only this property, but a number of those properties that I just talked about that are neighboring and adjacent properties. And one of the key and significant benefits is the impervious area that presently exists on that site and the significant reduction that would occur. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are 7.4 acres that are involved in this piece of property. When you total up the area of parking lot and buildings and total all of the various impervious surfaces, it totals 6.7 acres. So 6.7 acres of the 7.4 acres are impervious, which is 87% of the site. If we were to assume that every lot that's proposed were to meet the 50% maximum lot coverage requirement, and then add in the pervious area, rather the impervious area, I'm sorry, of the proposed streets and right-of-way, the total area that would be pervious then would be 40%. And of course, as I mentioned, there was an 87% impervious, which meant 13% pervious. So the amount of pervious area on this parcel of land would increase by 207% with this proposed redevelopment of the project as these single-family homes. The history of this proposed 31-lot subdivision begins well before the October 2024 filing of the application. After contracting to purchase the property, the developer went through and carefully reviewed the materials that arose during the beach walk process to see what the city's interest was in various uses of the property throughout that process. Eventually, that process led to a meeting that was had with a number of members from the city and its planning staff, including at that time Mr. Janis, Ms. Gray, the then city solicitor Alex Burns, and the plan was reviewed at that time with the city. In addition to that, the process that would be undertaken for this subdivision was reviewed. Following that meeting, there was some exchange of correspondence on a number of topics that arose during that meeting. A number of discussion points and changes were made to the subdivision application, and then the subdivision which resulted in the subdivision application that the commission sees here this afternoon being filed on October 24th. I did want to quickly review some of the site plan features. I'm sure there's a number of questions that commission members may have, and the site plan is a fairly straightforward site plan, so I won't belabor this. Beginning with the entrance, it is, of course, a signalized entrance. You can see the lane configuration. And one thing that is a little different than I think what was presented by the building official, for the entrance, it is 60 feet wide. The code does talk about the entrance to items, and that being serving a collector purpose or a collector street type purpose. And the entrance is 60 feet wide all the way to the end of the commercial lots. At that point, it's collecting that traffic, and then you would have the residential subdivision streets that would feed into that. And that's why the minor street, which is 50 feet wide, extends from the end of the lots that would remain with their commercial uses back throughout the balance of the proposed subdivision. I mentioned before that I was going to talk about a number of benefits through this process. One of the benefits of this property being redeveloped as 31 single-family homes is the significant reduction in traffic that would occur from this property compared to its use as a shopping center. If you took the current buildings that exist on the site and applied the traffic that would apply to them as far as calculating the average daily trips, if every building was fully occupied, the average daily trips generated by this shopping center would be 5,028 trips. With 31 single-family homes, the traffic generation is 344 average daily trips. That's a reduction of 93% of the average daily trips that would come from this site if it were to remain as a shopping center use and be rehabilitated in that fashion. The cross at the bottom of the screen, the second image is a cross-section of that 50-foot right-of-way for a minor street. As was noted, this does not have paving for the full width of the right-of-way, which I think is customary. The right-of-way includes two 17-foot paved areas, then two 2-foot curbs, and then on each side of that, of course, 5-foot sidewalks, and then outside of that, another 1 foot of grass. There was reference made in the building and licensing report to the various utility connections, and those are shown on this plan. With respect to water, there are 2 connection points that would result in a loop system as is desired. The one is on Route 1 near the front, where the cursor is located, where the red dot is located, and then the other is at the rear by Scarborough Avenue Extended, and that is actually part of that easement area that was referenced by Mr. Schenko in his report. There would be, as I mentioned, a loop and with an 8-inch water main through the site. With respect to stormwater management for the property, there is, again, that existing easement that is the connection for this for stormwater and utilities to Scarborough Avenue Extended. There is a 30-inch discharge pipe, and the water ultimately from that makes its way to Silver Lake eventually through that process. With respect to water quality management, that would be handled through systems that would be integrated into the various stormwater devices that would be used to convey the stormwater to that 30-inch discharge pipe. With respect to the quantity of water, this is another one of those benefits of the redevelopment of this site as this proposed 31 single-family home subdivision. With the 207% increase in pervious area, there will be a substantial decrease in the quantity of stormwater that flows to that 30-inch pipe and makes its way through the system. With respect to electric, Delmarva Power and Light would be the source, and the utilities would be underground in this area. With respect to the sewer service, again, you have the same 2 connection points that were discussed a moment ago. Those are both ultimately gravity connections that would discharge to the Newbold Square pump station. With respect to landscaping, this again leads to another one of the benefits to this proposed style of redevelopment as compared to a commercial redevelopment of the property, And that is, of course, the increase in trees. With 87% of the property being impervious surface, there is obviously not a great deal of space on the site currently for trees or where trees are located. In addition to the requirements, of course, that exist in the city in Chapter 253 regarding trees, the applicant plans on requiring street trees, as you can see on this rendering of the subdivision. And in addition to that, requiring that there be trees at the rear of the lots to form perimeter buffer around the outside and exterior of this lot, of each of the lots. When the agenda was posted, we became aware of the report that Mr. Schenko just gave to the Planning Commission. And I didn't intend to address as many of these items as Mr. Schenko highlighted for you, but I did want to address several of those, and particularly some of what I'll call the initial or threshold issues, and they were some of the same questions that the Planning Commission members had. And the first of those is, of course, the recommendation that the property be rezoned to a residential zoning classification. The applicant does not intend to file a rezoning application, and the simple reason for that is because the use of this property as a single-family home is a permitted by right use in that zoning classification. The code specifically says that the following, within the C1 section of the code, that the following uses are permitted as a matter of right, and that's any use permitted in the R2 district. The R2 district then refers you back to the R1 district, and the R1 district refers you back to the R1S district, and of course, single-family detached homes are permitted uses, and thus they are permitted uses by right. That also answers the question that was raised by the Building and Licensing Report as to whether or not this needs to go to the Office of State Planning Coordination. It does not. It is not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. It's not inconsistent with the zoning classification for the property. And it also doesn't meet the requisite number of lots that requires a visit or trip to the Office of State Planning Coordination as is set forth in the code. And the city is familiar with there being single-family residences on lots that are zoned C1. This exists in many locations throughout the city, that there are homes that single-family residential detached homes that exist on lands that are zoned C1. Probably the question that we wanted to make sure was clear in the Building and Licensing Report was the question about compatibility of uses in the future. Somebody buys lot 11 and says that they want to set up a business that's allowed in the C1 use. And that would be handled through restrictive covenants. The Oceanside Reserve Community would have a declaration of restrictive covenants for the property that prohibited commercial uses on those property. And in addition to that, those restrictive covenants would also have additional architectural requirements beyond the city's architectural requirements that it has, because certainly the city's floor area ratio requirements would apply, lot coverage requirements would apply, but for instance, the style of materials that would be there and the types of homes would be things that would be set forth in the restrictive covenants and the declaration of restrictive covenants for Oceanside Reserve. So ultimately, there wouldn't be available anymore, even though technically under the zoning classification, a property owner could have one of the commercial uses that's a by right use in the C1 district. Because of the restrictive covenants, that would no longer be a possibility, and so there wouldn't be compatibility issues with respect to those concerns. With respect to, there was a mention of that the plan was designed to R2 lot design standards. It was designed to C1 lot design standards, not R2 design standards. And so the setbacks that you see are the setbacks that are found within the code for the C1 district. The C1 district has specific setbacks that are set forth, and that is what is shown to create the building envelope for each of the 31 lots that you see that are on the screen. There was also a mention of double frontage lots. And without trying to pick a public debate with Mr. Schenko here this afternoon, we would argue that there are no double frontage lots on this plan because an alley is not a street. The code the code describes what an alley is, and an alley is a minor way which are used primarily for vehicular service access to the back or the side of properties otherwise abutting on a street. And so these would be, what you see there is an area that would, just as the code indicates, allow for vehicular service access to the back of those properties. Those properties would likely have a garage-type structure in the back that would be, again, loaded from the rear from that alley area ultimately. I think that covers the items that I wanted to cover. Certainly myself and the members of the team that I introduced are happy to answer questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Members of the commission, any questions?
I have one question, a general comment with regard to commercial use and 5,000 trips per day. This parcel hasn't seen 5,000 trips per day. And I've lived here since 1977, and it hasn't seen it for 30 years. But anyway, that's just a general
But if
comment.
somebody were to fully develop it, that is what traffic would, the traffic manual would say is the
Would be,
traffic
right.
traffic
But I'm saying
generated
it
by.
hasn't experienced that for decades.
It
but
lives
many
up
of
to
them-
its name in the forgotten mile. Yes, sir, Mr. Strange. It does.
for a reason. No, I have a general question that I think impacts what you're saying. There are aspects of the code where you said you could do this, but you want to do something different. And you disagreed somewhat, and it's not a time to go into it with regard to the building inspector, but there is a section of our code that's overarching, and I mentioned it in the last application, called Higher Standards Apply. And it's a general provision that essentially acts as sort of an overarching provision when in fact certain setbacks and certain side yards and certain other elements that the code doesn't express explicitly because it takes into account that there are implicit things that happen that may not have been thought about. But yet they want to put protection in there for the totality of what is the city. So I just point that out as a general principle, which I think it comes into play here because of several things that you mentioned. The previous time when this was developed, and it's just one nuance that caught my eye, at that time, DENREC required a retention pond, which there is no retention pond in here in this design. But yet you commented that you're taking other approaches to essentially mimic having a retention pond. I don't know what ultimately is going to happen in that arena, but it's something that may or may not need to be considered.
Is that a question, Mike?
Would you like, I mean, I can have Mr. Davidson address the stormwater management, that thought
I
process.
think it is a
behind
question.
Sure. No, we're happy, and if you could introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mark Davidson with Pannoni Associates. I don't ever recall seeing where DENREC had required a stormwater management pond, but we are, under the current Delaware stormwater management regulations, reductions in stormwater when redevelopment, as long as we provide 15% of the area within a project as pervious surface, then we can meet the requirements of the stormwater management regulations. This project happens to go a little bit further than that by being able to open up, as Mr. Hutt had indicated, opening up the amount of impervious area that's on this site. We're greatly increasing the amount of area that water's going to be able to recharge back into the ground water table. So there's going to be a lot of recharge happening here. There's going to be a lot of reduction in stormwater runoff to that 30-inch pipe that makes its way through the easement down to Scarborough Avenue and then into Silver Lake. Okay. So less water, it'll be a less reduction with this particular development being proposed.
Yeah, previously in the previous, what was going to be done, DENREC had permitted at that point for them to apply an older standard as opposed to the current standard for retention ponds for developments like this. So your approach that you're taking essentially answered the question I just raised.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question about the alley and the reserve drive then, because I heard you said it's not a street, right? The alley is just for private access to the back of houses. But Corey, when I talked to you the other day, you had said that it actually gives an alternative route out to Route 1, and because of that, the dead-end portion of Reserve Drive meets our code of being less than 400 feet. However, if that private alley is not an access to Route 1, then Reserve Drive is not a code-compliant dead-end street, right? I mean, I don't understand where this fits in. I understand it looks like it might have access to Route 1, but the developer is saying it will not, that it's not its intent.
It will certainly have access to Route 1.
But it's not a street.
If I may,
Yeah.
to that, this is the reason why I included definitions in the
Yeah.
report. I didn't
Yeah.
feel the need to go into them, but the definition of street is any street, avenue, boulevard, road, land, parkway, viaduct, alley, or other way which is an existing state, county, or city roadway, or a street or way shown upon a plat. For the purposes of these chapters, streets shall be classified as the follows. The first one is alleys, which are minor ways,
Yeah, okay.
which is a way that is shown upon this plat.
Oh, right, it even says the back of
So
properties, right.
It's
Okay.
a street in our interpretation from the definitions. The way that we interpret dead-end streets is the same way we interpret dead-end corridors. If you were to take this subdivision, and instead of seeing the lots there, you would see hotel rooms. And instead of the street, you would see the corridor of the hotel. One would be able to enter and exit from Route 1. You could go down halfway, and now you have 2 points of travel. You can either go straight ahead, and in which case, if that's your perspective, the portion of that street now and beyond now is a dead end because there is only one way to go, and you have to U-turn around. And then that more than 300, I mean, we're going to get into fire emergency vehicles and stuff. They need turnarounds. Fire hydrants can only be certain distances. So if they can't get that, then the emergency vehicle has to go in. Hence, they have to have the turnaround. So that's kind of the origination of that. But the streets in the middle, it's appropriately portioned because the bottom is right at about 400 feet, and that has the turnaround. And the top one takes advantage of the short dead-end street. The only reason that we pointed that out was the provision of that short dead-end street can only be for lots that are fronted with the R1 or R2
Yep,
district.
Right. Well, and didn't you also say then that the alley is going to have a cul-de-sac at the end of it, right?
Not that one. If that takes advantage of the short dead end, then a turnaround is not required if it's less than 300.
But it has to be zoned residential for that.
Correct.
Okay. And there are probably other things about that. I mean, I guess the only other thing I would mention is I take your point that it certainly meets the definition of a collector street. And part of that definition says streets for circulation within such a development. So it's hard to relate to the concept that Mr. Hutt described of it being a collector street only so far as it goes into the development and the rest of the street is minor. That doesn't somehow seem, it seems like the street's one thing. And I think your definition of collector street is the right way to go on that one.
And Mr. Dewey. Oh, I'm sorry.
And if I may respond to that results in probably a lot more impervious surface for a street that serves 31 people. You typically think of collector streets as gathering from businesses and residential uses. They actually gather from minor streets, put it on a collector street, and that connects you to an arterial. And that's the sequence that traffic usually follows on these things. In this case, we have 31 homes that you could say are being collected, but when you heard the average daily trips that I just said, which are less than 350, you don't typically think of that as warranting a 60-foot wide right-of-way, which again just results in a greater impervious area for this proposed project.
Mr. Dewey.
Mr. Hutt, you mentioned that there will be restrictive covenants.
Microphone, Joe.
You mentioned that you will have potentially restrictive covenants as a part of the agreements with home buyers or lot buyers. There is also a Rehoboth, and Jim, Commissioner Ellison, please correct me if you can with the title of it, but there's a document that describes preferred architectural styles and titles and stylistic elements. Do you recall the title of that?
I think it's architectural design guidelines, which is on the city's website.
So one question, is the developer, are you aware of that? And becoming aware of that, to what degree are you open to considering those as a part of your covenants and official guidelines for your home buyers?
Certainly are aware of those architectural design standards and have to go through those a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb, but in general, there would be compliance with those in general. The things that I envisioned, and I think the developer envisioned more importantly than what I envisioned, is things like requiring a one-car garage, a minimum of that, things like requiring sod, fully irrigated yards, subject to those things, requiring materials, for instance, no vinyl siding within. So there would be things, and some of those are items that you see in the architectural design standards that talks about the typical materials that were used in construction in Rehoboth. So there would be, I can't say today that there'd be 100% agreement with everything that was in there, but certainly those architectural design standards would help to form part of the basis of those restrictive covenants.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hutt, how long are restrictive covenants in Delaware enforceable? Do you have a rule against perpetuities issue?
No, well, there would be, except everybody puts in their restrictive covenants a rule against perpetuities workaround, and you base it on, usually it's the sitting president or whatnot that's in office and the last remaining family member of that person. So there are workarounds against the rule against perpetuities issue, and every community that I've ever been a part of or seen has a paragraph that works around the rule against perpetuities issue. So in essence, they are in perpetuity because those covenants won't outlive the.
I mean, are you basing on lives and being plus 21 years?
But you base it on the last living member that of the youngest person, like for instance, of the President of the United States, or in England, they always use someone that's in the monarchy, and they base it off of that. But it is what is used in restrictive covenants for 3 lots to 3,000 lots. It's the same provision that we use to work around a rule against perpetuities issue. And I'm happy to share that with your office here, what that language would be.
Ms. Davis.
I'd like to follow up on the restrictive covenants point. As I understand your proposal, the applicant does not want to rezone the property to residential use, either R1 or R2, but is willing to impose restrictive covenants for the benefit of the homeowners in that community. Who would be the benefited party for those restricted covenants? Would the city be a benefited party? Would the neighbors on Terrace Road and Scarborough Avenue Extended be benefited parties? My question goes to enforceability, because I've done some litigation, not in Delaware, in Maryland, with respect to restrictive covenants. And if the situation is that the only people who can enforce the covenants would be the other 30 homeowners in the area, the city would have no right to enforce it, basis to enforce it. The homeowners in the adjacent areas outside the area would not have standing to enforce it. Would the enforceability be limited only to residents of the subdivision itself?
I hadn't thought through that level of detail on the restrictive covenants, but I would say this, that it's the common practice, as you just mentioned, is for the restrictive covenants to be enforceable by those who are part of the contract for that specific community. Oftentimes in municipalities, when there's a subdivision, the municipality gains rights that they don't want to exercise because they don't want to incur the time, expense, and such of enforcing restrictive covenants. I hear that in most municipalities that they don't want to be in the business of enforcing private contracts, which is what a set of restrictive covenants is between those individuals. With respect to individuals outside, I can certainly ask the developer ultimately if I've just received permission to say yes, that they would be enforceable by the adjacent communities along Terrace Road, Silver, and then Scarborough Road extended.
Well, are you saying that that the developer would or would not provide that the city was in addition a benefited party, whether the city wanted to exercise its rights or not?
Correct. The city would be added as a party that could enforce the document, as well as the neighbors who are adjacent to the property.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chair, yeah.
Yes,
I just
sir.
have a general question, because I may have missed something here because of what Mr. Hutt said. The building inspector's position is that this needs to be rezoned, but you made a comment that, and it is correct, that when you use a higher level use from a lower level use, you're permitted to do that by right. But what you're saying is you are not going to apply the standards that would otherwise apply to R1 or R2 use?
Well, that's correct, because there are standards. When you look at C1, Tier 1 uses, there's a set of standards that apply to those uses.
Right.
And so those would be the standards that would be applied, correct? And that's the building envelope that you see on the screen and on the plans that you have.
Well, I don't think it's time to discuss it now, but I think it's problematic, I guess is what I would say, both legally and related to other aspects of our code.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hutt. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address this application. Please come forward and, as we said before, state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes if
Hi,
possible.
I'm Harvey Shulman.
Yes, sir.
Owner in Rehoboth. So I want to express gratitude to the developer for doing something here that was different from what was proposed in the past. That was just bad for the city, I think. But I also want to say that you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. I urge you to look at what happened with St. Michael's Place in the late 1980s, which involved double frontage lots and a rezoning of the property. St. Michael's Place was built on the cemetery, which amazingly at the time was zoned commercial. There was a lot to do about it, and the city rezoned that to R1. Eventually, the developer agreed and felt it would be in everyone's interest. So I urge you to look at the file in that rezoning. I believe it was a unanimous decision by the City Council to rezone, and I believe the Planning Commission supported the rezoning. I want to say something about double frontage lots. The original plan of St. Michael's was unanimously rejected by the Planning Commission back then. Jim Fuqua was the chair, who is a renowned attorney and a very bright guy and a fairly neutral arbitrator of, he's not pro this or anti that. But the St. Michael's development was on the original plan for it, and I'll get to an alley in a second, was a carbon copy of this, meaning St. Michael's was going to put a road behind the lots that are now on Henlopen Avenue, and it was going to be a dead-end road, and then the St. Michael's lots were actually going to back up to Henlopen Acres. But what that did, and I congratulate Corey on finding double frontage lots, because nobody's ever really heard of it, and back in the 80s, when it came up before the Planning Commission, everyone's head spun. But this actually creates two versions of double frontage lots, and this is what killed St. Michael's Place. As I understand it, the lots behind the alley, proposed alley here, themselves front on another street. So you are creating double frontage lots here, not only by the lots that are being created, having a street in front of them and a street behind them, but you're creating double frontage lots of the lots that already exist. And that's a significant problem, because the whole idea, and by the way, I was someone who was involved in the St. Michael's thing. That was a significant problem because the whole idea of double frontage lots is you don't want traffic vehicles on both sides of the lot. There's safety and a whole bunch of other reasons. So there's a double frontage lot here issue. And please look at the Planning Commission files in the St. Michael's case. And I have a lot of papers on it, and you'll see the discussion. They had to move the street. I totally agree with Corey. The definition of street, which is defined in the subdivision ordinance, specifically includes an alley shown on a plat. So you can't get around it that way. And then let me final by saying this. Two other things. Then the width of the street. One of the mistakes made on St. Michael's is that the street, I believe, is a 60-foot wide street. It is a complete waste of asphalt and everything else. So I support the notion here of narrower streets, okay? But and it should have been done on St. Michael's, but the developer at the time and no one else thought of asking for a variance. For a street like this, there really is no reason to have all of that pavement. But as a trade-off, I would suggest, if they can do that, whether getting a variance may be the way to do it, is to require that area to be green space and have some trees in it, so it's not just used for anything else they want. But the second point I wanted to make about the covenants that were brought up. For St. Michael's Place, this was before the tree ordinance, and so the only way we could get trees preserved back then was to have the developer issue covenants to preserve trees, literally not cut down certain trees that were marked. And the right to enforce that covenant was given to both the city and to the adjacent property owners. So there is precedent for that. Lastly, on short dead-end streets, as a person, I don't know, I worked on drafting the ordinance for short dead-end streets, and I urge you to look at the legislative history of that ordinance and the discussion of it, because a lot of the things that Corey said are really important to understand why we came up with the turning radius, what we were trying to preserve. It's not just some mathematical construct, to be on a plat. There were a lot of reasons behind it. And I think Corey identified the end result. But as you move this process along, please look at what was said about short dead-end streets then. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bruce Williams, 21 Newbold Square, and the president of the Newbold Square Condo Association.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hutt made reference to the utilities and the places where the easements go and the two red dots, and talked about the sanitary sewer going by gravity to the Newbold Square station. We in Newbold Square are very interested in making sure that there isn't additional capacity that goes through there through an old pipe that may need some attention. I'm not sure if there are any issues or not, but it's something we care about. And Mr. Schulman just referenced short dead-end streets. That's something that may come before you in the case that was on the agenda for tomorrow and has been postponed, but that's critical to that one.
All right, so thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward. Elect number 1, 2, and 3.
You guys can go ahead and line up.
Good afternoon. My name is Derek Kelly, one of the co-owners of Bin 66, one of the commercial properties located just south and adjacent to the proposed subdivision. Myself and my partner are in favor of any development or improvements to the current Baymart Shopping Center. As you mentioned, doesn't see 5,000 cars a day on any day. However, as far as we're concerned, the Oceanside Reserve proposal in its current form would make the 500-foot stretch of highway between Robinson Drive and the entrance to the subdivision considerably more dangerous. In the past 10 years, there have been 31 recorded accidents on just the northbound side of our stretch of highway, per the public crash data map available on data.delaware.gov. In addition, because it eliminates the access road on the south side, previously linking the Baymart Shopping Center to Terrace Road, it would likely force several large delivery trucks servicing Bin 66 and Gaia Organic Grocery to travel down Terrace Road and Blackstone Avenue and into either the town of Rehoboth or Dewey Beach to route back onto Route 1. We work with 25 different vendors over the course of the year, the vast majority of whom we get deliveries from on a weekly basis. I've spoken with 14 different drivers over the past 2 weeks about how they currently cross the highway to deliver to our store and their options if the access road between Terrace Road and Baymart were closed off. 8 of them said that they turn onto Terrace Road and always use the access road. Several drivers who turn onto Terrace Road going northbound always use the access road to exit safely at the light, and a few and larger CMB detached trailer trucks said it would be impossible, if not incredibly dangerous, to attempt a U-turn at Robinson. Drivers who are not able to make a U-turn in our parking area to exit back onto the highway would be forced to drive down those residential roads and into either Rehoboth or Dewey, adding to an already overburdened downtown area, or they would be forced to park in the shoulder of Route 1 and unload on the highway, which would be extremely dangerous considering several of our delivery drivers have side load vehicles. Forcing delivery trucks to make U-turns or unload on the shoulder would reduce visibility, put drivers, pedestrians, and our customers at risk, and increase the likelihood of accidents on an already problematic stretch of highway. I have 2 suggestions that I would love the city to consider that would improve safety, reduce potential additional heavy traffic, and minimize changes to the subdivision. These may no longer be as relevant given what the building inspector said earlier and that the plan has changed slightly from what was available 10 days ago, as it now has an entrance into the commercial lot directly off the northbound entrance before Lot 1, which did not exist previously. Suggestion 1, to reduce the width of lots 1 and 4 sufficiently to allow a full extension of the access road off of Reserve Drive would permit lots 6 through 12 to be widened overall by approximately 17.5 feet and would keep all lots compliant with the required minimum width. Reducing the width and eliminating lot 5 would allow for the safest alternative for trucks able to cross over Route 1 at a light-controlled intersection without making a U-turn and able to exit back onto Route 1 and continue either north or southbound with no additional traffic obstruction, in addition to allowing the future potential residents to actually enter the city that they then live in without exiting onto the highway. Suggestion 2 would be to reduce the depth of lots 1 through 5 by approximately 20 feet to allow for a public street alley running behind those properties off of the access road in the same width as the alley currently proposed on the north side. Still keeps all the existing lots compliant with the minimum required square footage and would allow our trucks to turn around safely and not have to route down Terrace Road and into either city. However, it would still require some of our trucks to attempt a U-turn at Robinson and would not provide a controlled exit back onto Route 1 and would require an additional U-turn at Spring Lake to travel southbound. Our hope is that if this moves forward, it will be done with consideration for safety and the existing infrastructure on this commercial section of the forgotten mile that has been there for decades. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Might have to lower this, thanks. Rick Hardy, the Sabre Lakes Alliance. We've gone through many iterations, I think, of this property. We started in 2015 opposing it, but we are very concerned still with this easement of the storm drains in dumping into Silver Lake. And I believe, Mr. Hutt, you mentioned something about a storm system to help improve quality, but I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Is it a storm drain? Is it a filtration system? Is it simply going to pour into Silver Lake? We already have water quality issues with Silver Lake where the fecal bacteria is well above the government standards for safety measures to swim or even touch the water. So what will this do to that? And then I think when we talk about quality, you said it would improve quality because we'd have more impervious space, but that also means we will have fertilizer, insecticides, and other chemicals coming off of lawns going into that as well. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about the stormwater system that you would like to install. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Jim LaShora from Scarborough Avenue Extended, number 1026.
So this is a follow-on to some things Harvey Schulman was saying, and also the Save Our Lakes Alliance interests, and also my neighbors all on the west end of Scarborough Extended. This alley that is behind our homes and may give us access to our new backyard garages and allow us to put in our pools when we put green space in place of the driveways we have out to Scarborough now. But that's a thought that just kind of popped in my head when Harvey was talking, but it sounds great because it gives more green space and it gives us the pools. But what I was going to say here is my neighbors are particularly concerned about this alley that's there, and the existing alley, of course, has been, like 8 acres of asphalt and it rolls across. But one thing to keep in mind is that, Route 1 was built like on the highest strip of land so that, it wouldn't flood during storms. And then the shopping center was put in next to Route 1 back in the 60s or 70s or whatever. And it was sort of built up to the same level. So then the shopping center drains onto our lots across that alley. And so the alley continues to be there. And, our concern, me and my neighbors, one had to leave early, another one is out of town for family concerns. But there are, 6 or 8 of us really at the end of Scarborough Extended here who are impacted by drainage from the shopping center and from this alley. And, it concerns me when I look at the application, where it says the existing drainage flow will not change, and the western portion of the property drains toward Coastal Highway. So it sort of does, but we're lower than them, and there aren't really storm drains, so it really just kind of rolls onto our yards. And we generally have deep lots, and, we get mosquitoes and stuff, but it goes away over time. But it's a concern for those of us sort of in the middle, where it all just kind of settles, where it doesn't go to Route 1 and it doesn't go to the lake. It just, kind of turns into a mosquito pond in our yards. And we would much rather see that shifted up onto, the shopping plaza area, this new development area as a retaining pond up there rather than draining onto, our yards to, as the green space. So that's our concern.
All right, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Do you have some more good news about parking fines?
No, they're waiting outside the door. I'm sure they're going to ticket us now. No, I just want to add, first of all, about pervious surfaces. Asphalt is pervious. Guess what? They use it all over Florida and many other places. We need, and we're actually looking at using it in Rehoboth too. So if I was building a development, I would put all of my asphalted roads pervious, and I wondered if they have even considered that. There's no need to have hard surface. Inland Bays has had a pervious parking lot for 12 or 13 years, and they have never, ever, ever had a problem with it.
Right. Thank you. Are we done?
Anybody else?
Well, thank all of you for coming.
Okay.
Members of the commission, what is your pleasure? I just wanted to announce that. Okay.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Hutt, pursuant to the code for this type of review, we'll send you a letter summarizing the various issues raised during today's hearing.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Shinko. How fast can you talk?
This one I want to keep just for 5 or 6 minutes.
All right, please.
For the 236 revisions. Attached today was something that the Planning Commission already worked extensively on, and that was for the resolution that was put forward some time ago. I think it was last year. About a month ago, I went before the Board of Commissioners at a workshop to provide them with this was a 6.5-year project, but it may stretch to 8 years for city code revisions as they relate to at least building and licensing in our purview. And Chapter 236 was the first one to be looked at. And so over the next couple months, what we would like to do is some internal review in partnership with the Planning Commission to look over the already proposed revisions in the resolution, and what I wanted to ask of you all today, if I may, is for if you happen to still, it's embedded in the agenda, but if you have any interest in re-examining the revisions that are in that resolution, if there are any other additional comments or amendments or anything like that that you'd like to look at, I'd like to bring it to for a topic to discuss next month, as I'll take the next this upcoming month to look over all of your work as well, and provide any comments from our department too that may help, even if it's just with terminology of terms defined or maybe processes. We can look at, which I'm sure you already have with fees, but it's just something to help get the ball rolling, and that building and licensing can help in any way that we can to get some of these revisions done for 236 and get them in a PowerPoint presentation, more or less, to the Board of Commissioners after, I think maybe we can all collaborate on this. It's not in Chapter 270, so Bill, what I would just ask, I read one section at the very end of the resolution that mentioned 270. If you could maybe go through and see if there's any other additional comments that pertain to 270, because we can take those out, because since 236 isn't in 270, we don't need a public hearing with the Board of Commissioners, as it's not pertaining to 270, which is, we can get it done faster that way. So I just brought it forward today to just bring it up in public discussion, to bring it out, and that I will bring back forth with it next month. And I'd like to receive any comments that you guys have, or we can talk about it next month as well. And I'll have a little presentation for you then.
So you basically just want to know if there have been any changes in our thinking since we adopted that resolution and
Correct.
those changes? Okay.
Correct.
Because that was a pretty extensive process, as I recall, but it was.
It was, I would say, a lot of the legwork's already done.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do we need to look them up, or are you gonna send them out to everybody?
Well, we have them.
Chairman or Vice Chairman?
What is your pleasure? I'll do
Oh,
whatever
okay.
you tell
Got
me
it.
to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can send them out to everybody if you want.
I didn't realize there was.
Yeah,
We're
I'm not
good.
asking for every single thought that you've had so far, just
Took us 2.5
because it looks like you
years.
did a lot of work already. But if there are anything that maybe have come up in the past several months or year since that just maybe caused issues, or it could be interpreted a few different ways, we want to tackle those, and that's my main goal with the overall code rewrites. I have asked everyone in the department as well, think about those times that it just caused you a headache and it was code related. Let's work at those and see if we can clarify some things, so next time it happens, everyone knows what to do.
So you want us
it's
to
a
look
very
over it
good
again
idea.
and with a fresh eye?
Correct.
Okay.
And then I'll do the same. And
No. Yes, but no. I think what we're saying is that we're going through and we're embarking on a large code rewrite.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that are incorrect. But when he said that we don't want you to think of everything that might possibly, I mean, this is, what we can accomplish. And that's the problem at the moment, because this is a huge undertaking. And this one seems to be nearly done.
Okay.
In that sense. So that's why we're starting there.
So are there any tweaks is really the question.
Minor thoughts that you might have.
Mr. Shinko, good job as usual.
thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Anything else? Do we have any other comments or anything?
I want you out of here by 4:30. That's closing time, City Hall.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta run. I'll see you tomorrow.